right. Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for being here again and joining us today. Um, we're so glad you're here for Module D. And, just like in the previous sessions where we've taken time to really take some time and space to open up in a good, positive way, we're going to go ahead and do that today. Right. So just go ahead and take a moment to center yourselves before we get started with the module. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for that grounding and getting us all centered in today's space. Um, Just as a reminder, our facilities do have restrooms, there are emergency exits. Just pay attention. And remember, if you go out to the restroom, to just give us a thumbs up to let us know that you're okay so we don't go chasing after you, to check in with you and make sure that you're doing fine. So if you just give us a thumbs up on your way out, we know that you're doing what you need to take care of yourself. We again want to just thank our hosts, our tribal community here for providing the space and the resources for us to have these sessions. And it really speaks to the investment that the community has in growing healthy families. So we're really thankful for the space and all the resources that we've been allowed to use while visiting. If you could just please take a moment to silence your phones, turn off your devices so that we can center around our intentions today and be fully present. We do understand that life happens and life is going to continue as we're here in our session today, but if you could just silence them, that would be really helpful. The last three sessions, we've learned about trauma and trauma histories and the way that and their impact. We also made some commitments to ourselves and to our children. Healing takes time and can also be intense, and at times it can evoke a lot of emotion. Taking care of ourselves is important through this process and beyond, which includes being gentle with ourselves and others through this journey towards healing. Our circles of support are important in supporting us through the healing process. If you remember our last session, we ended with talking about circles of support. So today we're going to spend some time really developing and thinking about what that is. Circles of support strengthen individuals, families, and communities. And in this and in future sessions, we're going to spend some time discussing and developing them. You can always follow along if you turn to page D3, D as in Delta 3. You'll see a prompt there, and it says, what is one thing you do to take care of yourself that you enjoy or wish you could do more often? So if you could take a few moments and reflect on that prompt and write your answers down in your parenting workbooks. Um, and then I might ask people to share a little bit. So I'll give you some time to go ahead and think about what you've done to take care of yourself, and we'll gather back in a little while, in just a moment. Great. I saw some pencils moving and some coloring happening. Great. Could I ask for a volunteer to share what they responded or share with the group? How do you take care of yourself? Or what do you enjoy that you wish you could do more often? You see a volunteer? Yeah, Megan.
Yes, I wrote down walking because I do enjoy it, and sometimes it's alone, and sometimes I like to walk with other people, and sometimes I like to walk while I'm on the phone with people. But I don't always remember to do that, but it's a goal of mine that I want to do more, and it feels good to move and not just be in one place.
Yeah, there's some really good ways to get our body moving. And sometimes just that body movement really helps us. So that's a really great answer. Olivia, I thought I saw your hand up.
I had written down baking. I really enjoy baking with my family. I feel like it's a good way to connect with our traditional recipes, but also a way to have time to bond and talk with each other and catch up on each other's day. I feel like it's a really great activity to just bring everyone together and have a full circle moment.
Oh, yeah. Baking is a really excellent way to spend some time alone. And of course, there's always the amazing outcome of a cake or cookie or pie. So that's really great. We heard some really great examples today of things that we can do alone to take care of ourselves, but also things that we can do with others when that's what we need. I also heard things that, give us space to be reflective and lots of different ways of self-care. So thank you all for sharing that. Next slide. Great. So just like in other modules, we do want to remind you that we came up with learning agreements that was developed in the first session, and we've been adding to it. So I just want to give anyone the opportunity to add anything to the learning agreement if there's something that has come up or something more that you all think we should add. Any additional items? Hmm? All right, great. All right, I also want to remind everybody that we have our parking lot hanging up here. And remember, parking lot is there for things that maybe we want to come circle back around to and think about, discuss as a group. But I want to invite you all to remember that the parking lots are here. Please use them. And also, if you take a look, there are exit tickets that will ask you and remind you to fill out before leaving today. So just reminders for the day. Go ahead. Okay. If you want to go ahead and turn to page D2 in your participant workbooks, you will see the goal and learning objectives for today's module. We're going to go ahead and review it, but if I could get a volunteer to read what the goal is and the three learning objectives, that would be really great. Do I have a volunteer? Teresa, thank you.
Sure. So let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and take it from here. The goal of this module is to understand parenting resilience, recognize parenting challenges, and begin to develop a circle of support. The learning objectives include self-care, develop a self-care plan, parenting connections, identify parenting supports, and then the third objective is parenting resources, identify parenting resources.
Great. Thank you for that, Teresa. Thank you for helping me out there and reading out loud the goal and objectives. We're going to go through a lot today. So I want to go ahead and tag in my co-facilitator, Jennifer. Ready? Tag, you're it.
So thank you, Deidre. So last session, we ended by watching the video, We Shall Remain, to highlight the resilience of our peoples. So if you would take a little bit of a time and open your workbooks to page D3, you'll see a quote by Kazu Haga. And it says, if we carry intergenerational trauma, and we do, then we also carry intergenerational wisdom. It is in our genes and in our DNA. What a powerful statement, right? So we're going to begin this session by talking about circles of support, which include ways of taking care of ourselves and identifying supports and resources. So let me ask everybody, if you've ever flown in an airplane before, you may remember the flight attendant saying something like, in the event of a sudden drop in pressure, an oxygen mask will drop from above. Secure your own mask first before assisting others. So why is it important to put on our own mask first? Olivia?
Yeah, I think if we can't take care of ourselves first, we won't be able to effectively help or support anyone else around us.
Thank you, Olivia. Exactly. If we're not putting on our own mask first, we can't help others effectively, right? So we have to be able to do that for ourselves before we can take care of someone else. So it definitely is critical to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. And the circles of support that we're going to talk about here in just a moment really do strengthen individuals, families, and our communities. And these relationships and practices have traditionally helped to raise our children and support families. So our circles of support help us to live our family and community values and help us to be resilient. So let's take a few moments to look around the room and to refresh ourselves about our discussions in our last few sessions and our activities reflected on the chart papers about community values, Native resilience, and balance during difficult times. And this is something that we call historical resilience. So over here on this side of the room, we have our chart paper that we've put up, and we'll take a moment to review those for just a few seconds. All right. So let's take a moment to open your workbooks to page D3. And you're going to spend a few moments identifying and writing down who is in your circle of support. And once you're done, take a moment to share in your small group who is in your circle of support. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking that time. So if you would be willing to share your discussion from your small group, who'd like to go first? Hardy?
Thank you. So in our small group, we were discussing that a lot of us really rely on our friends. And then we also talk a lot about, our other family members, like our siblings, our aunties, and, uncles. Yeah. And then there are also, I specifically also like to, talk to my sons in my son's school, the parents over there. So his friends, parents are sometimes can be really helpful, especially because we're all parenting kids of the same age.
Thank you, Hardy. Wonderful. So definitely thinking about our own families, our own relatives who are also parents, and the friends of our children's parents too can be very helpful. Anyone else like to share? Megan.
Yes. In our small group, we talked about sometimes therapists that are connected to ourselves or our child or family as a whole. We talked about having great connection with our children's teachers, and we identified programs in our community that provide family activities, often for free, and also after school programs that are really a great help between the time of after school and between that time before we get off work.
Thank you, Megan. So yes, sometimes again, as Hardy mentioned, it's our families, parents that we know who might be friends of our children's parents. And then we may have some of these more formal supports, right? Like therapists in our communities or after school programs, and those leaders who are leading those programs may be those circles of support folks that we can call on. So wonderful examples, everyone. I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on here for a moment. We're going to watch a video here now that's going to talk a little bit about our circles of support. And in this video, we will hear from Rebecca from the Pueblo Vacama again. And this time she's reflecting on self-care, resources, and support. So while you're watching the video, if you would, turn to page D4 of your workbooks and answer these questions. How did they know when they needed self-care? And how did they know when something was a good fit? And how did they know when something was not a good fit? So we'll take a moment and we're going to listen to Rebecca here in just a few seconds.
I know when a person, activity, or resource is good for me when I have this uplifting feeling about it afterwards. Whatever it may be, it doesn't have to resolve or fix anything, but it empowers me. It gives me enough strength, confidence, assurance, knowledge, or information to feel like I can continue on or face whatever it is that I need to. What something feels like when it's not right for me or it doesn't feel like a good fit, it will have the opposite effect. For example, I'll feel discouraged, frustrated, or confused by it. I'll have this gut feeling of uneasiness, and my mind will start to overthink things because I'm trying to make sense of it. Sometimes I just know, and other times I talk it over with someone I trust because getting another perspective really helps me when I'm not sure. As a parent, I think self-care to me looks like remembering who I am and that I'm not just a parent. As a parent, I feel like I'm constantly in need of someone else in the house for something, and it can feel draining because I'm giving to each person in the family and the home, whether that's my time, my energy, or my care. And sometimes I'm giving myself to multiple people in my home at the same time. And so it can be easy to forget about my own needs for a while. For me, when I know I need to take care of myself, even if I don't know what it is yet, it will feel like I'm on autopilot. I'm just doing. Or I feel frustrated so much that I can't really think well or feel like I can take a breath. And sometimes for me, which I think is something that I noticed about myself after my first child, is that I become sad. I get this heavy feeling in my heart that just stays there. Those have been the signals that tell me you need something and you need to change something. And what that looks like has been different. Sometimes I just need to go grocery shopping alone without the children. Sometimes I need just that one-on-one time with my husband or my mom or my sisters or a close friend. Sometimes it's changing a habit I have that isn't working out. And lately, it has been taking time to learn and reflect on myself. So for me, self-care includes time for self-reflection and learning. Sometimes that's reading a book or reading something that I like. And other times, I think it can be needing to be home for ceremonies at Acoma or being with community, whatever that looks like. All these different ways of self-care that I reach for are each a response to what I'm feeling and needing at that particular time. Because I think there can be the feeling of pressure to do things right and well with our children, but that's not always realistic. Parents are people and we don't always know what to do. And I think that we have to give ourselves some grace and compassion when we're trying to figure things out with our children.
All right. So again, thank you to Rebecca for sharing in her video. We heard a lot of really good things that she mentioned talking about self-care. So now, everybody, let me ask this. How did they know when they need self-care? Anybody like to volunteer? Teresa, thank you.
Yes, Rebecca mentioned that sometimes she can feel drained and forget about her own needs. She felt like sometimes she's on autopilot and feels frustrated. And she talked about feeling heavy in her heart or even sad.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, definitely. Lots of really good examples that she gave of when she's feeling that she needed self-care. And I think sometimes we can relate to that, right? All right. Now, how did they know when something was a good fit? Olivia.
Yes, Rebecca said that often she feels empowered, motivated, confident, and sort of like herself again when something feels like it's working for her.
Thank you, Olivia. Yes, some again wonderful examples. She feels like herself. She feels empowered as well too. So that's how she knew it was a good fit. All right, how about when it was not a good fit? Hardy.
Yeah, I think Rebecca shared in the video that she feels frustrated, confused, everything. So it's kind of like an opposite fit. And sometimes she also note that she sometimes just know that something's not a good fit, but sometimes she's unsure, so she needs to talk to people about it. And that's how she can clarify things for herself.
Thank you, Hardy. Again, yes. So very good examples of when things weren't a good fit, feeling heavy, feeling frustrated, right? And sometimes it's not always clear, like, did that feel good? I'm not quite sure. And always conferring with somebody can also help clarify for her when it was a good fit or when it wasn't. So wonderful. And again, a wonderful video that's very helpful in helping us think about what feels good when we're thinking about self-care and what may not be a good fit for us. All right, so now we're going to take some time to consider those questions for ourselves. So if you would take a moment and turn to page D5 of your workbooks and write down responses to those same questions, but now we're going to consider ourselves. So how do I know when I need self-care? When something is a good fit for me and something is not a good fit? So I'll give you about 5 minutes to take some time, write down your responses, and then take a moment to share amongst yourselves in your small group. So we'll take a moment to do that. Okay, everybody, so thank you for taking that time. So let me ask again to folks, how do you know when you need self-care? Any volunteers who would like to share? Teresa?
Yes, in our small group, some of the things that came up actually were discussed in previous modules when we were talking about a flipped lid and calm brain. And we talked a lot about when we knew that we were about to flip our lid, that we experienced maybe headaches or tense muscles. Cold hands and maybe even dizziness. So those are some of the things that we were have reflected on in an earlier module.
Thank you, Teresa. So again, great examples and a great, time for us to think about what we've already learned, right? We've already begun to identify some of those pieces of when we are needing self-care, when our lid is flipped, for example. All right. How about when something is a good fit or not a good fit? Megan, thank you.
Our group talked about when we knew it was a good fit and we did something, it felt rejuvenating to us. It felt like we had more energy after, and that it was something that we had a desire, and it was a compelling activity to do. So it felt like we get to do it as opposed to we have to do this kind of thing for self-care. And then when it wasn't a good fit, we talked about things like kind of the opposite of the rejuvenation, where we didn't feel rejuvenated after we did it, and we felt like we could have done something better with our time, you know. So um, I think those are a couple of examples.
Wonderful, wonderful examples. When we feel rejuvenated or we really wanted to do this or it felt fun or engaging, right? Good fit. When we were like, ugh, better use of my time, something else that I could have done during this period, right? So again, some great examples of what's not a good fit and what's a good fit. All right, everybody. So thank you. Some wonderful examples that we shared about our own need for self-care and what's a good fit and what's not a good fit. So let's move on here into thinking about this as a toolbox. So another way to think about our circle of support is having our own parenting toolbox. And as we turn to page D5 of your workbook, we'll be covering 3 tools today as part of our training: self-care, parenting connections, and parenting resources. So I'll turn this back over to Deidre, who will take care of us through these next few pieces. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jen, for taking us through that. We're going to go ahead and I want to draw your attention to page D6 through D10 of our participant workbooks. We're going to be using those pages for this next session. Before we get started, if you take a look up at the slides, there's a graphic and a definition. If I could get a volunteer to please read out loud the definition of self-care for us. Thank you, Olivia.
Self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health.
Right. Self-care is an action word. It's taking that action to preserve or improve one's own health. When we think about health and well-being, overall, it means looking at different domains that impact our lives or, that help us keep balance. When one area of our lives is out of balance, it can impact all the other areas. In a little bit, we're going to start an activity to learn more about the components of developing a self-care plan. You'll find the information again in your workbook starting on page D6. In a moment, I'm going to place you all into 3 small groups. Each group will be assigned an area of self-care: emotional, physical, or social. In your small groups, I want you to begin by reading about your assigned topic area in your workbook. Again, pages D6 through D10. If you're in the group with emotional self-care, you will start on D6. If you are in the group with physical self-care, you're going to start on page D7. And if you get put into the social self-care group, you will be on page D9. Okay? In your small groups, you will have 10 minutes to complete this activity. You will, if you take a look around the room, there are already poster papers up with each of those domains. See, emotional's over there. Take a look over here. We have physical, and right there we have social. So in your small groups, once you get assigned, you're going to do 3 things. 1, you're going to write a brief definition of your assigned area of self-care. So you'll define what is emotional self-care, what is physical self-care, so on. Number 2, you're going to describe why this area of self-care is important. And finally, in your small groups, you're going to write down phrases or drawings that your small group comes up with that are good examples of self-care ideas that fall within that domain. As you're thinking about this, I'd like for you to think about things that you're already doing Megan, you mentioned walking, and Olivia talked about baking. So mention things that you're already doing or things that you would like to start incorporating. When we come back together after the group work, I am going to ask for volunteers to report out the things that you discussed. And remember, we'll have 10 minutes for this activity, and we'll let you know when your time is up. So if you go back, I'm going to go ahead and separate you all into groups right now. All right, now that we have you all in groups, before I let you go into your groups to do this activity, can I just make sure that we all understand? Does anyone have any questions? Raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if those instructions were clear today. All right, I'll let you go ahead and find your way to your groups. And once everyone settles in, we'll start the 10-minute countdown. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for all of those really great discussions. Jen and I were walking around the room. We saw some really great phrases and little doodles. But we want to go ahead and get ideas from everybody. So maybe we can start with the emotional self-care group. Do I have a volunteer from the group who can report out? Olivia.
Yeah, so my group and I just came up with a definition of emotional self-care, and we said engaging in activities, settings, and people for individuals to better and maintain emotional well-being slash comprehension by being aware or identifying feelings and allowing healthy and beneficial expression.
That's a really great definition.
Yeah, and we just basically said that this area is essential, just like any other areas of our body for self-care, as it can be very influential into ways that the other areas operate. But specifically, processing and understanding our emotions can enhance relationships and build slash increase resilience. And some examples that we had come up with were journaling, baking, which is one that I partake in pretty often, meditating, family slash friend dinners, possibly bi-weekly, bi-monthly, and crafting. And these just particular activities allow an individual to be by themselves or surround them with other people to physically express the way that they're feeling.
That's really great. You guys covered a lot in your group discussion. Thank you so much for that, Olivia. What about what kinds of conversations did you all have in the physical self-care group? Can I have a volunteer from that group to go ahead and report back out to us? Hardy.
Yes, thank you. So our group, we discussed about physical self-care. So the first question about definition, we define it as good physical health habits, including like healthy eating, exercise, and taking care of our bodies. So that's for the first question. And then the second question, we discussed that physical health care is very important because it's how, like we can survive and thrive. It's through our body. So it's really important then to take care of our body since, that's how we do things. And then as you can see in our chart paper here, we have a lot of drawings. So one is a bed, this human here on a bed. So we talk about the importance of sleep. Having good sleep is important. We also draw a hospital, meaning that, it's really important for us to go to the doctor and have our regular checkups and stuff. And we also have a drawing of pills here because some of our group members are prescribed with some medications. So, we talk about the importance of taking those medications as prescribed. And you can see here too, there's like a plate with like rice and corn on one side. There's veggies and as fruits on another side, and then there's a place with like meat or fish on the other side. So we just want to like emphasize the importance of like a balanced diet, having all of these like grains and stuff. And then lastly, we also have this drawing of two wine glass because we believe that two wine glass is good, but not more than two because otherwise it gets a little bit much. So just kind of like limiting our use of alcohol is kind of what we discuss. So thank you, everybody.
That's a lot. Thank you so much for all of those really great ideas. Those of you who, as you're listening to other groups report out, I want to encourage you to utilize those pages D6 through D10 and take notes, especially from those who are reporting out from other groups that you maybe didn't participate in. So these are all really great ideas and a great way to utilize community resources by getting ideas for all the other domains. So take notes. Finally, we have our social self-care group. Do we have a volunteer to report out for your discussions? Oh, Megan.
So, social self-care we defined as having positive, healthy relationships and having a concern for others. And why we said it was important was we talked about its necessary mechanism to be able to have another perspective from other people, not just our own. So it gives us new ideas, a different way of looking at things, and someone to talk to about things that are happening in our lives. So in a way, it allows us to both receive support, but also give support to others who may need it as well. So both of those things are why it's important. And then finally, we didn't have artists in our group, and so we have a lot of stick people in some of our drawings. We have people playing game night. We have people, we did draw a screen, just a square to signify a screen to show activities like joining an online group chat or a group like a parenting group. They have great parenting groups online. We talked about, we had drew a phone to signify that we can, if not in person or online, we can always call people and talk to them on the phone.
All right. Great. Thank you all. So for all of those really great discussions and for everybody for volunteering to report out, I'm right there with you, Megan. I cannot draw a stick figure, even if I have a ruler. But when it comes to self-care, another way to think about how our communities found balance is thinking about historical resilience and how we continue to be resilient people even in modern times. So thinking about resilience in that way is a great way to find some balance. We won't be able to finish every section in class. However, I'm going to give you some time right now, about 5 minutes, to go ahead and look at the remaining areas of self-care and reflect on them. Write some notes in your workbook if you need to, but just take that time to really reflect. So I'll go ahead and give you 5 minutes to look over the other domains. Thank you for taking that time to do some reflecting. Now that we've had that opportunity, we're going to go ahead and go into a different activity. All right, if everyone can turn to page D10 in their workbooks, you'll see some prompts there. One says, an area of self-care I do well and want to continue prioritizing. And the other says, one area of self-care that I want to add or get better at. We're going to give you 5 minutes for this next activity. When your 5 minutes is over, we'll let you know. But go ahead and write down those areas that you would like to continue doing or get better at. And once you do that, go ahead and share with your elbow partner. And when that's done, we'll go ahead at the end of the 5 minutes, call you all back together. All right. Thank you for all those really great conversations. Jen and I were walking around. We heard some great stuff. So just a few reminders to close out this part of the module. You can't offer to others what you can't offer to yourself. You know, self-care needs to be an ongoing priority as a parent or a caregiver. And you just need to be consistently filling your own cup. So we also want to encourage you to think about self-care activities that can include practicing traditional ways, cultural ways. So thank you all for sharing and for your reflections. We're going to go ahead and transition into a break, and I just really want to encourage you all to lean into some of those self-care things that we talked about or that you talked about with your small groups. So go ahead and take your 15 minutes, and when we come back, we'll start again. Thanks.
Everybody, I hope everybody had some good time during our break to just take a deep breath, take a moment for yourselves, recenter. We were leaning into that self-care, and breaks actually are very helpful throughout the day. You know, take some time for yourself. Work, home, life. We need those time frames. So let's come back together. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how we put self-care into practice. And we're going to do a little bit of that here together. So we're going to do an activity that involves a strategy from many of our communities, which is music. And in our communities, we know we might hear drumming, flute music, different types of activities like that, all of which can be very grounding. So while we listen to the audio, you can close your eyes or find a point of focus in the room. And when the audio begins, I want you to notice how it makes you feel. If you want, you may use the top of your page D11 in your workbooks to jot down any thoughts, feelings, or reactions during the time we're listening, or even after the time we're listening. And this audio should last about 2 minutes or so. It's not very long, but we're going to take some moments to listen. Now, again, does anybody have any questions? Any questions they'd like to ask, or are you all feeling good about this? Give me a thumbs up if you do. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So we'll take a moment to listen to our piece here. Okay. That felt good, right? Just to take that time to listen, close your eyes. Now, what did you notice during that music about your body or your mind or your emotions? Anybody like to share? Hardy.
Yeah, I noticed that it was indeed very calming. It's very soothing. It almost feels like I can listen to my heartbeat. So it's really, really grounding.
Thank you, Hardy. Yes, I actually felt the same way. It felt very calming for me hearing that drum. So thank you so much, everybody, for taking that time to listen through. Now, many people notice that when they do activities such as this, that their breathing slows, that your mood changes, and you feel more connected or grounded or peaceful. Why do you think that is? Hardy?
Is it because we are, taking the time for ourselves and kind of coming down and just kind of sitting there and just, really paying attention to our body?
Definitely. Yes, we're really kind of recentering ourselves, listening to our inner being, right, during that time as we're listening in on this activity here, that music helping to soothe us. So, can you think of any other activities like this, maybe traditional, non-traditional? Megan?
Yeah, I would say beading, or even if you're not a beader, watching someone bead, or so drinking hot herbal tea is also another calming one. There's a lot, actually, different examples, but those are a couple that came to the top of my mind.
Thank you, Megan. So wonderful examples. Again, some of them can be our traditional activities like beading, like you mentioned, taking that time to really pay attention to that process and practice. And even just tea drinking, right? That process of just taking that sip, feeling that hot liquid, right? Tasting it, feels so good, tastes so good. So all of these are really good ways where we can put that self-care into practice, even through small things and even through traditional activities. So thanks so much, everybody. All right, everybody. So thank you for sharing those examples of, self-care that we've been talking about here in this section. So now we're going to segue a little bit and change gears and move into this discussion around parenting connections. This is a little bit different in this discussion, but what we're going to be talking about is, again, writing down some examples of the kind of person we would want to talk to about parenting challenges. So if you turn to page D11 of your workbooks, we're going to work through this section. So here we're not looking for specific examples of people. We're not going to say my sister, my aunt, my mother. What we're looking for is, again, why would you go to them? Why would you go to that person, for example? So maybe someone who can keep confidentiality or is non-judgmental, someone who always cheers me on. Now, once you've finished your individual work, after a few minutes, we'll have the opportunity to share within your small group settings. And each small group will work together to create a drawing on chart paper, or again, list some of those examples that reflects the group's ideas. And when we come back, I'll have you all report out. And so have a person identify who can help you do so. All right, everybody. Again, before you go, you're going to be working on page D11 of your workbook. And you're going to describe the kind of person you want to talk to about parenting challenges. All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for taking some time to, again, work on that activity. Would anybody like to share? Olivia.
Yes, my group and I just talked about different people, but we all particularly agreed on somebody who was able to listen to us and probably validate our feelings and our experiences based on the specific situation, and also a person who wants to provide support and not judgment.
Wonderful, wonderful examples. Again, someone who listens, who's non-judgmental, and who affirms us, right? Anyone else? Hi, Hardy. Go ahead.
Hi, I was also in Olivia's group. We also talked about having making sure that someone that we talk to can make keep things private and not share it with other people in our community. I think that was very important for us too. And then people that not only listen, but towards the end, hopefully can also give us some ideas on how to solve the problems if it's something that we can solve. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hardy, for that. All right, so now we're going to segue into another activity, and we're going to turn to page D12 of our workbooks. So based on this previous activity, you may have heard from everyone in the room about their ideas around those attributes. What makes a person be that type of person we want to go to when we are having parenting challenges? So we're going to take some time to think about what are those positive attributes of those we would want in our circle of support and negative attributes of who we want out of our circle of support. So I'll give you about 3 minutes for this activity. And again, turn to page D12 in your participant workbook. All right, thank you everybody for taking some time. And I was looking around the room at everybody's chart papers, all the activity going on, and saw quite a few through lines. So let's think about the negatives here. Gossiping, talking negatively about our family, judging, all of those are definitely negative attributes of people we don't want in our circle of support. What do those negative attributes have in common? Teresa?
They're dismissive and in some cases minimizing our experience.
Exactly. And that's not who we want to have in our circle of support, those types of folks who have those attributes, right? All right, now the other piece, of course, that we were talking about is the positives. So I saw lots of good examples. Again, someone who makes us feel better about myself or my parenting, someone who's supportive, someone who's telling me I can get through it or is reassuring. What do those positive attributes have in common? Olivia.
Yeah, they would make me feel seen, validated, understood.
Exactly. They're seeing us in our role and really validating our efforts, validating who we are. Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you for working through this particular activity together. Again, I know it was a switch of gears from moving to self-care to this discussion about who we would want in that circle of support. We're working on building what our toolbox looks like. So now we're going to switch into talking about parenting resources. All right, so again, wonderful examples, everybody. Now, just like we mentioned at the very beginning of this segment, sometimes we think we have to have specific people within our circle of support just because of who they are, where they sit within our family system. We might think it has to be our auntie, our uncle, our grandma, our mom. But we can again turn to those attributes and again think about who are we including? We want to have those folks who have those positive attributes, who are supportive, who are reassuring. And so that's what we can again examine when we're building our circle of support. So thanks everybody for taking some time to walk through this activity. Now we're going to turn to a discussion around parenting resources. Okay, everybody. So in this section, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about parenting resources. And what we've placed on your tables is a packet that we've developed for everyone that includes both local, state resources, national resources, and some that are specific here and within your community. And really, when you take a look at these resources, this is not just about those folks who were wanting in that circle of support or the attributes of those folks that we would want in that circle of support. But these are resources too that are helpful and complementary within our cities, our states, our, again, national resources that we might find helpful in our journey in this parenting process. So let's take some time, and I'd like for you all to again move within your small groups, and we're going to take some time to read through those lists of resources, that packet, and begin to identify for yourself 1 to 2 resources from those lists that we provided that you would want within your circle of support. And as a group, I would also ask you to identify what would be your top 5 resources that you would like to utilize along this journey, that you would find helpful in this journey, in your parenting journey. So we'll take a little bit of time, about 2 to 3 minutes or so, and then we'll come back together and we'll again discuss all together. All right, so now as we come back together in this discussion around parenting resources, we're going to turn to page D13 here in our participant workbooks. And what we've provided you all is a list or a packet of resources that are both local resources, resources that are specific to your community, but also statewide resources and national resources. Now, as we're moving into this piece, again, we're not necessarily talking about the attributes of someone who we want in our circle of support. We're shifting gears to think about more broader resources that we would like to utilize as we're on this parenting journey. And these resources that we find within our communities, within the state, and even nationally may be very helpful. So as we move into our small groups, I want you to take a little bit of time. We're going to spend about 3 to 5 minutes within this activity. And I'd like you to start first with, again, identifying 1 to 2 resources within that, again, packet that we've provided that you yourself would like to utilize and include in your circle of support. Now, after that, take a bit of time to share that with the folks within your small group. Each of you take some time, talk about who you identify, what program, what service, what resource that you would like to utilize. And then come up within the group with your top 5. And we're going to take some time and you can write that on chart paper, have a discussion about what those top 5 might be. And we're going to come back together and we'll report back out. So take a few moments and I'll give you some time to think that through. All right, everybody, thank you for taking some time to work through that activity and to take some time in looking at those resources and thinking what you would utilize. So let's come back together. Are there any groups that would like to report out on their thoughts and what you all shared? Teresa, would you like to take some time to share the top 5 that you all came up with?
Yes, I would. The top 5 resources that our small group came up with include 988, Tribal Behavioral Health Program, Parenting Talking Circle, School-Based Mental Health Program, and food pantries.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you can see there's definitely a range of resources that were provided and that, again, you all think would be good to include in your circle of support. Now, these aren't all necessarily, say, behavioral health or mental health services or support groups, right? Even a food pantry and those types of resources can be very helpful. And we may need to call on them while we're through this parenting journey. So thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. A good time for us to reflect on what those local resources are, as well as those statewide and national ones. And if you didn't have a chance to really review them, we want to make sure that you take some time when you go home tonight, read up on those. We've provided some information, those contacts for you all to take advantage of. So now as we're getting ready to wrap, we are going to transition here, and I'm going to hand it off to Deidre.
All right. Thanks, Jen, for tagging me back in. We're going to start to wrap up. If you all recall, we started this session by thinking about our circle of support. Now we're going to revisit our circle of support one more time. So if everybody can turn to page D14 in your workbooks. All right. Everybody there, can I just get a thumbs up? Great. I'm going to give you a few moments to just take a look at the different areas of your circle of support and think about how it looks similar or different from how we started this session. I want you just to go ahead and reflect on it, take some notes, and look back on page D3 at that initial circle of support that you started, and then reflect on what's different about it now after our session. All right. Thank you all so much for taking some time to reflect on your circle of support. We're going to move on to a reflection. If you turn to your workbook, pages D15, we're going to use this as prompts for self-reflecting today. In this session and in future sessions, we just want to remind you that things can come up emotionally or can feel heavy to discuss for some. In order to take care of yourself, we will be identifying resources like we did today or activities for self-care at the end of each session. All right. If everyone can just take a moment and look on page D15 and write down some of your answers to those prompts. If I need support, identify a person I can reach out and talk to, an activity I can do for self-care, a resource I can use if I need support or help. We went through quite a bit of information today. We talked a lot about different domains of self-care. We talked a lot about parenting resources. We provided you with some resources. And for tonight, or for between now and our next session, your homework is going to be on page D15. One way that you will practice self-care this week. I want you to lean into that self-care like we did today. Maybe try something new or do something that's already consistent. We just want you to take care of yourself. Jen is going around already and is distributing the exit tickets for those who didn't have some already at the table. Go ahead and fill out your exit tickets. Remember to turn those in. Um, we we want to hear from you. We want to know what you've learned. If you have questions about this session that we didn't get to, please feel free to use the exit ticket to make us aware of those things, and we'll be sure to circle back around. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. We're so glad you could come. We're so happy to see you again, and we cannot wait to see you for the next session. We're going to go ahead and go around, collect any exit tickets. Jen and I will be here for a little while if you have any questions or there's something you needed to discuss. Otherwise, please take care of yourselves. We're happy you're here, and we're already looking forward to the next time we get to see you all.